The storm hammered against the weathered walls of the old farmhouse like fists demanding entry. Marcus Webb sat in his workshop, oil-stained hands carefully adjusting the gears of an antique clock. The work calmed him, gave him purpose in the quiet years since his wife's passing. Lightning split the sky, casting sharp shadows across the room. Then came the sound. 3 soft taps on the door, barely audible over the thunder. Marcus lifted his head, grease-smudged face creasing with confusion. No one visited anymore. The farm sat 5 miles from the nearest neighbor, surrounded by dense pine forest. He set down his tools and approached the door cautiously. When he opened it, the rain swept into his face, cold and sharp. But the cold wasn't what made him freeze. Standing on his porch was a figure cloaked in something that shimmered like liquid metal, hunched against the storm. The hood fell back, revealing a face that shouldn't exist. Her skin held a faint lavender hue. Her eyes were too large, too bright, filled with golden light that pulsed with each labored breath. "Please," she whispered, her voice carrying an accent from nowhere on earth. "My child. He's dying." Marcus's heart thundered in his chest. In her arms, wrapped in fabric that seemed to breathe with its own light, was a bundle no bigger than a human infant. Tiny fingers, almost translucent, clutched weakly at the cloth. The baby's breathing came in shallow gasps, each one seeming more difficult than the last. "I don't understand," Marcus stammered, his mind struggling to accept what his eyes witnessed. "What are you? Does it matter?" Her voice cracked with desperation. The golden light in her eyes flickered like a candle fighting against the wind. "Would you let him die on your doorstep because his blood isn't red like yours?" The question pierced through Marcus's shock. He looked at the dying child, saw the mother's tears mixing with rain on her strange, beautiful face, and something ancient stirred in his chest. The same instinct that had made humans pull strangers from burning buildings, that had made them share their last meal with the hungry. "Come inside," he said. Stepping back, Nisara stumbled into the house, legs shaking with exhaustion. Marcus guided her to the couch, his hands hovering uncertainly, afraid to touch her but wanting to help. She unwrapped the baby with trembling fingers. The child's skin glowed faintly with patterns of light that pulsed erratically, like a failing heartbeat made visible. "What's wrong with him?" Marcus asked, kneeling beside them. "Your world, the atmosphere, it's too heavy with nitrogen. His lungs cannot process it properly. He needs, I don't know your words." She pressed a hand to the baby's chest, her own breath ragged. "We had medicine, but they took everything. They hunt us." "Who hunts you?" "Everyone." Her eyes met his, and in that moment Marcus saw exhaustion beyond physical weariness. It was the exhaustion of running, of losing everything, of watching your child slip away, while the universe looked on with indifference. "Your government, my pursuers, anyone who fears what they don't understand." Marcus stood quickly, his mind racing. He wasn't a doctor, but he'd spent 40 years fixing machines, understanding how systems worked. If the baby couldn't process nitrogen, maybe he could help filter it. He rushed to his workshop, grabbed an old oxygen concentrator he'd bought when his wife was sick, and hauled it back. "This produces pure oxygen," he explained, setting it up quickly. "Will that help?" Nisara's eyes widened with hope. Marcus fashioned a makeshift tent from plastic sheeting, creating a small chamber around the baby. He cranked the machine to maximum output, and oxygen began flooding the space. They waited, hearts suspended in the moment between hope and despair. Slowly, the baby's breathing steadied. The erratic light patterns on his skin smoothed into a gentle, rhythmic pulse. Kylan's tiny fist unclenched, and he released a soft sound, almost like a sigh of relief. Nisara collapsed forward, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Marcus placed a hand gently on her back, feeling her warmth through the strange fabric of her garment. She didn't pull away. Instead, she turned and looked at him with those extraordinary golden eyes, now brimming with tears, that caught the lamplight like liquid starlight. "Thank you," she whispered. "You saved his life when you had every reason to turn us away." "I'm just a man," Marcus said softly, "but I couldn't let a child suffer." "Any child." Outside, the storm began to ease, but neither of them noticed. In that small farmhouse, surrounded by the hum of machinery and the soft breathing of a sleeping alien infant, two beings from different worlds discovered the first fragile thread of connection. Marcus didn't know what the morning would bring, what dangers lurked in the shadows, but in that moment he made a choice that would change his life forever. He would protect them, whatever it took. Dawn arrived grey and uncertain, painting the farmhouse in shades of doubt. Marcus had spent the night in his armchair, watching over the makeshift oxygen chamber, while Nisara slept fitfully on the couch. Every sound made him jump. Every branch scratching against the window felt like an omen. Kylin woke as the first light touched the windows, and Marcus witnessed something that stole his breath. The baby's eyes opened, revealing irises that swirled with colors that had no names, shifting from deep violet to silver blue. When Kylin saw Marcus's face, the child didn't cry. Instead, he reached out with those tiny translucent fingers. And when Marcus offered his own weathered hand, the baby gripped it with surprising strength. In that grip, Marcus felt warmth spread up his arm into his chest, settling somewhere deep in the hollow place his wife's death had left. The baby made a sound, musical and soft, and Marcus found himself smiling despite his fear. "He likes you," Nisara's voice came from behind him. She stood, her cloak removed now, revealing a form that was humanoid but distinctly other. Her skin held that lavender luminescence, and her movements carried an otherworldly grace. "He feels your heart. We can sense such things. Your people read emotions," Marcus asked, carefully withdrawing his finger from Kylin's grasp. "Not read, feel. Like you feel heat from fire." She moved closer, kneeling beside the chamber. "Your heart is kind but heavy with old pain. You've lost someone you loved very much." Marcus's jaw tightened. "My wife, cancer 3 years ago. I'm sorry." Nisara's hand hovered near his shoulder, uncertain of human customs. "I lost my bondmate too. The ones who hunt us killed him when we tried to flee our dying world." Their eyes met, and understanding passed between them, the recognition of shared grief. Before Marcus could respond, a distant sound made them both freeze. It started as a low hum, growing steadily louder. Marcus rushed to the window, and his blood turned to ice. 3 black drones swept across the sky, their movements methodical and searching. Red scanning lights swept across the forest, moving systematically toward the farmhouse. "They've tracked us," Nisara breathed, fear flooding her features. "They can detect Kylen's energy signature from miles away. I led them right to you." "The basement," Marcus said quickly. "It's lined with old lead pipes and concrete. Maybe it'll block their scanners." They moved with desperate efficiency. Marcus carried the oxygen concentrator, while Nisara gathered Kylen, rewrapping him in the luminescent fabric. The basement was musty and dark, filled with forgotten tools and memories Marcus had boxed away. He set up the equipment in the far corner, while Nisara huddled with her child, singing softly in a language that sounded like wind chimes in starlight. Above them, the drone sounds grew closer, hovering directly over the house. Marcus held his breath, his hand instinctively reaching for Nisara's. She gripped it tightly, her skin surprisingly warm, pulse racing against his palm. They stayed frozen like that for endless minutes. 2 beings from different worlds, united in terror for the innocent life between them. Finally, the drones moved on, their humming fading into the distance. "That was too close," Marcus whispered. But he didn't release Nisara's hand, and she didn't pull away. The days that followed fell into a careful rhythm. Marcus taught Nisara about Earth, about human customs, and the simple pleasures of coffee and morning sunshine. She told him about her world, about cities that floated on clouds of crystal vapor, about music that could reshape matter, about love that bound souls across lifetimes. In the evenings, after ensuring all curtains were drawn, they would sit together watching Kylen play. The child was developing quickly, faster than human infants. He could already lift objects with his mind, making Marcus's tools dance through the air in wobbly patterns that made them both laugh. One night, as they sat close on the couch, Kylen sleeping peacefully between them, Nisara's head drifted onto Marcus's shoulder. He froze, unsure, but then slowly, carefully, let his arm settle around her. She turned her face toward his neck, and he felt her breath warm and slightly sweet against his skin. "Marcus," she whispered, "thank you for making us feel safe again." "You're not a burden," he replied softly. "You're both a gift I didn't know I needed." She lifted her head, those golden eyes searching his face. Slowly, hesitantly, she raised her hand to touch his cheek. Her fingers were warm, and where they touched, Marcus felt that same spreading warmth, like standing in sunshine after years of cold. "Your species is remarkable," she said. "You could have feared us, hated us. Instead, you opened your home and your heart." "Maybe we're not so different," Marcus breathed. "Maybe love and compassion are universal languages." They sat like that, faces close, breathing the same air, two lonely souls finding unexpected solace. Outside, the night pressed dark against the windows, and somewhere in the distance hunters searched. But inside the old farmhouse, surrounded by the gentle hum of machinery and the soft breathing of a sleeping child, something new was blooming, something that transcended species and stars. 3 weeks passed in careful hiding. Marcus had grown accustomed to the rhythm of his new life, the way Kylan's laughter filled rooms that had been silent too long, the way Nisara's presence made the farmhouse feel less like a tomb of memories and more like a home again. But the fragile peace shattered. On a Tuesday night, Marcus was preparing dinner when he heard scratching at the back door, weak and desperate. His heart seized. He'd assumed Nisara was upstairs with Kylan, but when he opened the door, she collapsed into his arms, her clothing torn and stained with something that glowed faintly blue in the darkness. "Nisara!" He caught her weight, stumbling backward. She was burning with fever, her skin flickering between its usual lavender and an alarming grey. "What happened? Where have you been?" "Tried to lead them away," she gasped, her words slurred with pain. "They found our trail. Had to make them think we'd moved on. They shot me, Marcus. Their weapons, they poisoned my kind." Terror gripped him as he carried her to the couch. Blood, if that's what the blue luminescent fluid was, seeped from a wound in her side. He'd never felt so helpless, so utterly unprepared. Upstairs, Kylan began crying, sensing his mother's distress. "Tell me what to do," Marcus pleaded, his hands hovering over the wound, afraid to touch. "Afraid not to. The silver pouch in my cloak," Nisara managed. "Medicine." "Press it into the wound." Marcus found the pouch with trembling fingers. Inside was a paste that shimmered like ground pearls. As he pressed it gently into her wound, Nisara screamed, her back arching. The paste began to smoke, drawing out the poison, and Marcus had to hold her down as her body convulsed. I'm sorry," he kept repeating, tears streaming down his face. When had she become so important to him? When had this alien woman become someone he couldn't imagine losing? Finally, the convulsions stopped. Nisara's breathing steadied, though she remained unconscious. Marcus cleaned her wound with shaking hands, then carried her upstairs to his bedroom, the first person to sleep there since his wife had passed. He placed her gently on the bed, tucking blankets around her fevered body. Kylan was wailing in the spare room. Marcus scooped up the infant, feeling the child's distress pulse against his chest like frantic heartbeats. "Shh, your mother's strong. She's going to be okay." "She has to be." He spent the night moving between rooms, checking on Nisara while soothing Kylan. The baby wouldn't settle until Marcus brought him into the bedroom, placing the child beside his mother. Kylan immediately curled against Nisara, tiny hands gripping her sleeve, and finally quieted. Marcus sat in the chair beside the bed, watching over them both. In sleep, Nisara's face relaxed, revealing a beauty that made his chest ache. How had this happened? How had he fallen for someone from another world? She woke near dawn, her eyes fluttering open to find Marcus still sitting vigil. "You stayed," she whispered. "Where else would I be?" He moved to the bedside, taking her hand carefully. "You terrified me tonight. I couldn't let them find Kylan. I couldn't let them find you." Her fingers tightened on his. "Marcus, you've given us so much. Safety, kindness, a home. I never expected to feel again after my bondmate died. But you've awakened something in me. Marcus's breath caught. Nisara, I don't know how this can work. We're from different worlds, literally. But I can't deny what I'm feeling. She pulled him closer with surprising strength, and he found himself sitting on the edge of the bed, their faces inches apart. My people believe that souls recognize each other across vast distances, that love isn't bound by flesh or form, but by something deeper. And what does your soul say? Marcus whispered, that I've found you after traveling countless light years. Her free hand reached up, cupping his face, thumb tracing the stubble on his jaw. That maybe we've both been lonely long enough. Marcus closed the distance between them, pressing his forehead gently against hers. It wasn't a kiss, not yet, but something more intimate, a promise. A recognition of the impossibility and rightness of what was growing between them. Kylen stirred, making small, contented sounds, and they both looked at the infant. He deserves a future, Nisara said softly. One where he doesn't have to hide what he is. Then we'll give him one, Marcus replied. Whatever it takes, we'll keep him safe. Keep you both safe. Outside, the sky was lightening, painting the world in soft gold. In that bedroom, surrounded by the debris of 2 broken lives, something new was being built. Marcus knew the danger hadn't passed, knew that hunters still searched and that their time might be borrowed, but right now, with Nisara's hand in his and Kylen sleeping peacefully beside them, he felt something he thought he'd lost forever. He felt hope, and maybe, just maybe, he felt the first stirrings of a love that transcended everything he'd thought possible. The warning came 2 days later, in the form of helicopter sounds, cutting through the afternoon quiet. Marcus was in the kitchen, teaching Nisara how to make soup when they both froze. Listening to the mechanical thunder approaching from the south. They're not passing by, Nisara said, her face draining of color. That's a search pattern. Marcus moved to the window, peering through the curtain. 3 black helicopters circled in the distance, moving systematically closer. His stomach dropped. How long do we have? Minutes, maybe less, if they have equipment that can detect Kylen's signature. Nisara was already moving, gathering Kylen from his makeshift crib. Marcus, you should stay. Tell them you never saw us. You can still have your life back. Stop! Marcus grabbed a backpack from the closet, stuffing it with supplies, the portable oxygen concentrator, anything they might need. That's not happening. We leave together, or we face this together. Your choice. Nisara's eyes shimmered with tears, but there was no time for words. They rushed to the back door, just as the first helicopter touched down in Marcus's front yard. Through the window they saw men in tactical gear pouring out, weapons raised. The forest, Marcus whispered. I know these woods. There's an old logging road that leads to the coast. They ran. Marcus led the way through underbrush he'd walked 1,000 times, Nisara close behind, with Kylen pressed against her chest. Behind them, shouts erupted from the farmhouse. The hunters had discovered their escape. Stop! This is Agent Morrison with Homeland Security. A voice amplified through speakers. Marcus Webb, you are harboring an illegal alien entity. Surrender them now, and we'll consider you a cooperating witness. Marcus didn't slow down. His lungs burned, legs aching, but adrenaline drove him forward. Beside him, Nisara moved with fluid grace despite her recent injury, her alien physiology allowing her to navigate the rough terrain with startling efficiency. A shot rang out, bark exploding from a tree trunk inches from Marcus's head. They were shooting to frighten, not to kill, at least not yet. Marcus grabbed Nisara's hand, pulling her down a steep embankment toward a creek he'd fished as a boy. There, he gasped, pointing to a gap beneath a fallen oak tree. Hide here. I'll lead them away. No! Nisara's voice was steel. We stay together. You said whatever it takes. Another shot, closer this time. Kylen began to cry, and Marcus watched in horror as the baby's distress caused the air around them to shimmer with heat. The child was losing control of his abilities, broadcasting their location like a beacon. Marcus, take him, Nisara urged, pressing Kylen into his arms. Your human energy signature might mask his enough to confuse their sensors. I'll create a diversion. Nisara, don't... But she was already moving, climbing back up the embankment. Marcus heard her shout, drawing the hunter's attention. Gunfire erupted, and Marcus's heart nearly stopped. He wanted to go after her, to protect her. But Kylen wailed in his arms, tiny fists glowing with uncontrolled energy. "Shh, little one," Marcus whispered desperately, holding the child close to his chest. "Your mama is incredibly brave. She's coming back to us. She has to." He pressed himself into the hollow beneath the oak, feeling Kylen's wild heartbeat against his own. The baby's skin flickered with patterns of light, but slowly, gradually, Marcus's calm breathing seemed to soothe him. The glow dimmed, and Kylen's cries quieted to whimpers. Above, the sounds of pursuit grew distant. Marcus waited in agony, counting seconds that felt like hours. Then finally, he heard careful footsteps approaching. His muscles tensed, ready to fight with nothing but his bare hands if needed. "Marcus?" Nisara's voice, beautiful and whole. He nearly sobbed with relief as she slid down the embankment, breathless but unharmed. "I led them east, then doubled back. We have maybe 10 minutes before they realize." They ran again, this time following the creek downstream. Marcus's legs screamed in protest, but fear drove him forward. Behind them, the helicopter sounds returned, angrier now, more determined. The forest began to thin, and Marcus smelled salt air. The ocean was close. He changed direction, leading them toward his final desperate plan. 5 minutes later, they burst onto a rocky beach, and there, perched on a cliff overlooking the grey Atlantic, stood an abandoned lighthouse. "Can you climb?" Marcus asked. Nisara nodded, and together they scaled the rocks using handholds Marcus remembered from childhood adventures. The lighthouse door hung crooked on rusty hinges. Inside, dust and bird droppings covered everything, but Marcus had never seen a more beautiful sight. They climbed the spiral stairs to the lamp room at the top. Through the grimy windows, they watched helicopters sweep across the tree line, searching. But the old lighthouse's thick stone walls would mask heat signatures, and its location on the cliff made it nearly invisible from the air. Marcus collapsed against the wall, Kylen still in his arms. Nisara sat beside him, their shoulders touching, both breathing hard. The baby, somehow sensing their temporary safety, finally stopped crying, looking up at Marcus with those swirling, impossible eyes. "That was too close," Marcus panted. "Thank you," Nisara breathed, "for not leaving us, for running with us instead of turning back to your safe life." Marcus turned to look at her, seeing the ocean wind whip her dark hair around her face, seeing the determination and fierce love in those golden eyes. "This is my life now. You both are." Nisara leaned in and kissed him. It was brief, desperate, filled with fear and relief and something deeper. Her lips were softer than he'd imagined, warmer, and when she pulled back, both of them were trembling. "We can't stay here long," she whispered against his mouth. "I know." Marcus looked at Kylen, then at the woman beside him. "But we'll find a way. Somehow we'll build the life we all deserve." Outside, the helicopters continued their search, unaware that their prey sat just beneath their notice. 3 heartbeats huddled together against the world. They spent 3 days in the lighthouse, living on rainwater collected in old buckets and the few supplies Marcus had managed to grab. During the long hours of hiding, they really talked about everything. Nisara described her world before it began dying, its twin suns and floating markets, songs that could change the color of the sky. Marcus shared memories of his wife, his regrets, his dreams he'd thought were buried, and slowly, carefully, they planned. "We can't keep running forever," Marcus said on the 3rd evening, watching sunset paint the ocean in shades of fire. Kylen slept peacefully in Nisara's arms, his small body finally adjusting to Earth's atmosphere. "But we can be smart about it. I have a friend, old military buddy, lives in Alaska. Off the grid, no questions asked kind of place. You'd leave everything for us?" Nisara asked softly. "Your home, your life." Marcus turned to face her, taking her free hand in both of his. "That house is full of ghosts. You two, you're real. You're alive. You're my future if you'll have me." Nisara's eyes filled with tears that caught the sunset light. "On my world we have a bonding ceremony. When two souls choose each other, they join their life forces, becoming stronger together than apart. I never thought I'd want that again after losing my first mate. But Marcus, you've healed something in me I thought was broken forever. Then bond with me, Marcus said simply. Human style or your style, I don't care. I love you, Nisara. I love your son. I want to build a life where we don't have to hide. She kissed him then, deeper than before, and Marcus felt that warmth spread through his entire body, wrapping around his heart like gentle hands. When they parted, both were breathless, and Kai Len was stirring, making happy gurgling sounds as if approving of their union. That night, they performed a simple ceremony under the lighthouse lamp. Nisara sang in her native language, words that made the air shimmer with harmonics. Marcus spoke vows he'd written in his heart, promises to protect, to cherish, to face whatever came together. They exchanged tokens. Marcus gave her his wife's wedding ring, not as a replacement but as a symbol of new beginnings. Nisara pressed her palm to his chest, and he felt something settle there, warm and permanent, a piece of her essence joining with his. Now we are bonded, she whispered. Where you go, I go. Your life is mine, and mine is yours, for as long as we both shall live, Marcus added. The traditional human words mixing with her alien ritual, creating something entirely new. On the fourth day, they made their move. Under cover of darkness, they hiked to a small coastal town where Marcus called his friend from a payphone. I need a favor, he said quietly. The kind that could get you in trouble. His friend, a gruff man named Patterson, asked no questions. Navy Pier, slip 17 midnight. Boat'll be there. They waited in the shadows until a small fishing vessel appeared, lights off, engine barely purring. Patterson himself was at the helm, his weathered face breaking into a slight smile when he saw Marcus with his unusual family. Webb. You always did have a talent for interesting situations, Patterson said, helping them aboard. Canadian waters in 6 hours. From there you're on your own. Thank you. Old friend. Marcus gripped his hand firmly as the boat slipped away from shore. Marcus stood at the stern with Nisara beside him, Kylan sleeping in a carrier on his chest. They watched the lights of their homeland fade into the darkness, and Marcus felt no regret. Only hope. What will we do in Alaska? Nisara asked, leaning into his warmth. Live, Marcus said simply. I'll teach Kylan how to fish, how to fix machines. You'll teach us both about the stars. We'll be a family, strange as that sounds. It sounds perfect, she whispered. Kylan woke then, his eyes reflecting the starlight above. The baby reached up with both hands, touching Marcus's face and then Nisara's, and for a moment all three of them glowed with a soft luminescence. The bond, complete and unbreakable, months later, in a cabin surrounded by snow-capped mountains and pristine wilderness. Marcus would teach Kylan his first words in English, while Nisara taught them both to manipulate energy with their minds, her people's gift slowly awakening in Marcus through their bond. The government stopped searching actively after a while, their attention drawn to newer crises, and on quiet evenings, when Kylan played in the snow and caused it to dance in impossible patterns, Marcus and Nisara would sit on their porch, hands intertwined, watching the northern lights paint the sky. Do you miss your world? Marcus asked one such night. Nisara looked at him, at their son, at the life they'd built from desperation and courage. My world died, she said softly. But I found a new one, not a planet, but a home, in the most unexpected place. In the heart of a human who taught me that compassion is the most powerful force in any universe. Marcus pulled her close, kissing her forehead. We saved each other, he said. That's what love does. Above them, the stars wheeled in their eternal dance, indifferent to borders and species, caring only about the light they cast on those brave enough to love despite the odds. And in that small cabin at the edge of the world, a family slept peacefully, proof that sometimes the greatest adventures begin with a simple knock at the door and a choice to open your heart to the impossible.